Hey boys and girls, this is Mr. Sepulveda. I'm making this video for you in case you wanted to join us for our comic book creation over the next couple of weeks with our live drawing sessions. So please continue watching so you can have ready what I need you to have ready by tomorrow. Weeks ago, we started talking about character design for a comic book, and we came up with a dog being our main character. Most of us are doing dog hybrids, so you can have like a dog dragon, a dog griffin, or in my case, I decided to go with a dog knight character. You guys can see that I pulled some references over there to the right. And then right now, you guys are seeing some of my sketches for some of the ideas that I wanted to come up with for my main character. In all honesty, I'll be doing the bottom left dog right there that you see on your screen. Um, and that's only after I've decided um, on multiple designs. You'll see me here kind of tease the fact that I'm going to use that little dog on the left as my main character. And one of the reasons why I chose that particular dog was because in our comic book, we're planning on making about 3 to 4 pages. And sometimes simplicity is just one of those things that will help us create the character over and over and over, especially if it's a main character. It's someone that's going to be repetitively drawn within our comic book. So I decided to go with this simplistic character. Here I'm kind of toying around with a candy cane weapon because I know my comic is going to deal with a Dog Knight character that's going to save Christmas. So that's going to be his backstory. When I was done messing around with him, I thought that I would try to create an example for the video that I'm creating right now. And so I went with a couple different ideas for it. You can see that I'm still sticking with the dog knight theme. I'm trying to look at my references on the bottom right hand corner as I design my character. Here I was toying around with the dog carrying a weapon of some sort, a sword, because most knights would have like a sword type of weapon to hold. And as you guys noticed, like I started drawing in some shoulder pads. That's one of the themes that I have going on with most of them. Here I'm trying to draw that helmet on the left. And I thought that the lines kind of looked like dog bones, and I figured since this was a Dog Knight character, the dog bones would be a really great addition. And I even try to continue the dog bones within his shoulder armor over here. And one of the other things you guys may see is this like little chainmail armor on the belly that kind of wraps through the arms of my knight character, and that's the area I'm shading in right there. That was also one of the things that I really wanted to have within my character design to make it stick out, as well as be something simplistic to color and to design over and over and over again. So right here, I'm kind of pointing at, if you can kind of make out the arrows, I'm trying to point at all the things that I liked within all my sketches. Whether it was a head shape, an armor type, an ear, a smile. I try to pick those out to design my final character that I was creating for this particular video for you. And so I was looking at the simplistic dog head on the bottom left-hand dog. So I'm using that to try to create another dog head for this particular knight that I'm creating for this video. You can also see me doing that chainmail again. I try to keep the armor as simplistic as possible for this video. And you can see that I continue the chainmail right there on the belly. I'm also trying to take or put in the dog emblem on his chest plate right over here. Thought it'd be really cool to see. I was also thinking about trying to put in some big old shoulder pads there as well. And so I figured I would try to make something a little bit simplistic as well, something easy to design over and over and over again. So I kind of went with some simplistic shoulder pads for this part of the armor. Start putting in the arms, and I thought like giant gloves would be pretty cool because then they can kind of come up to the elbows. Then I wouldn't have to have too much of the chainmail on the top of his arm. Here I decided to have him wield a sword, and I thought that the sword would be pretty cool if the hilt of it had bones on him, since he is a dog and a knight character. Ultimately decide on 4 fingers instead of 5 for a dog, because why not? And so here I'm designing the actual sword, trying to keep it as symmetrical as possible. I ultimately stretch it out near the end, and you'll see that in a little minute. But I figured for right now, in my head when I was starting this off, I thought a shorter sword would be kind of funny for him, since he's such a tall looking character. So there I am finishing up the chainmail. And then I really did struggle a little bit when it came to the bottom portion, because all my sketches only had from the torso up. But ultimately, I thought the simple boot design would be perfect. Here I am adding more of that chainmail pattern throughout. There I am trying to figure out what his tail would look like, if he should even have a tail. I wasn't sure if it'll be in the final design when I was working this out. I decided here that stretching it out would be much better, like a ridiculously long sword would be great, since it would go with his height, give it a little bit more realism to it, since he is a taller character. And then I finally thought that there wasn't enough break in color when it came to his lower half. So here I am messing around with like a belt, kind of like some Superman trunks. And then I thought about just kind of adding some either pads to his legs. And I wasn't sure if there should be an emblem on these pads. I toyed around with the same dog emblem that was on his chest. I ultimately didn't like that idea. I thought perhaps, we'll go with that bone theme again. I wasn't liking that idea. And then I thought, well, dogs are canines, so I thought I could have a canine little pads going across both boots. But in the end, I ultimately just I wasn't a fan of it. It just didn't seem to fit right. And then thinking about the different angles when I was going to draw this dog again, just weren't going to seem right. And so I decided that I really liked that knee pad idea. And so I just kind of connected the two shapes to just further extend the boots for this character. I wasn't too satisfied with the tail in that sketch, and so I thought I would just lift it up a little bit more, maybe a little bit more furry or so. And then ultimately, that's going to be the character that I'm going to more or less go with. I did add the 25 in there for December 25th, right? He is trying to save Christmas. And then I really like the helmet and that upper left-hand dog. So I try to figure out what would that look like on this particular dog. So I try to keep it as original to that helmet that I designed, but I decided to give it a little bit more of a lift because of the nose that would be underneath the helmet. Sorry about that. That was my phone. And you can kind of see how I try to match the two ideas together since I zoomed out. You can kind of see it. All right, so that's the helmet. So ultimately, your goal was to design a main character, right? In our case, we chose a dog hybrid character. So this is a dog knight for me. You can kind of consider it a dog human mix. That works too. Again, some of my students are doing dog dragons or dogs mixed with something else. Okay, the next step of this assignment, the next step that we were doing, were creating thumbnail sketches for what we wanted our comic book covers to look like. So here I decided to make four. Your thumbnail sketches don't have to be all that detailed. Here I'm using a stick figure to represent the dog knight. Here I'm using a box with a little line on it to represent Santa's sled, right? There's an exclamation point there because I want him to be shocked that Santa's sled had fallen to the ground, and so I kind of give it a little bit of scenery on the cover by adding like forest trees, bushes, and whatnot. So that was my first thumbnail sketch idea. And here I am coming up with another idea here, and I figured maybe, just maybe, this dog receives his powers from a magical helmet that turns him into the dog knight. And so here I am kind of thinking that idea through. Here he is with a magical helmet, and he's shocked. And I'm trying to draw interest in this with this comic book cover to make the reader want to open up the comic book. For my third idea, I thought maybe I would include Santa Claus. Maybe I would have Santa Claus on the ground, and maybe he might be knocked out um, uh, in this cover, and then perhaps there's a supervillain or something that's trying to attack him, and then maybe this dog knight tries to step in to protect Santa Claus. And so I was trying to make him more of a little bit of a tough doggy, if you will. He's got his arms out, and he's kind of ready to protect Santa. He's kind of in a guard dog type of stance. My final thumbnail sketch is more or less what I decided to go with for this video. I thought if I made this dog knight at a higher angle, that he would look a little bit more imposing. He would look a little heroic. He has his arm on top of his dog bone sword. I thought it would just be a pretty cool idea to have with his arm on the hilt of the sword. And so that's ultimately the design that I'm going to go with for this cover. So again, we made a main character, a dog hybrid of some sort. You sketched out some ideas, you used references to create it, and then ultimately you made some thumbnail sketches to create a cover and then create your cover. So here I am just kind of coming up with this idea for this cover. I'm just making it a little bit larger on this next sketch, just trying to figure it out. Again, I've got my reference of my original sketch and kind of comparing it back and forth with the Dog Knight character that I'm putting on my comic book cover. So I'm trying to keep everything as close to what I had on the sketch, as close as possible, adding just a little bit more detail because I figure if the cover's a little bit more detailed, then it's going to get readers invested. It doesn't necessarily mean that inside the comic book that's going to be that way. So here I am just kind of messing around with those gloves. It did take me a moment, and I didn't realize it when I was doing it, but in my original sketch, the gloves of this knight actually goes all the way up to his elbows. Here it's kind of there. I don't do a good job of representing that, but I did want to get a decent enough idea out there, and you can kind of see where I was going with it. And it's completely okay that when you guys go through your sketching process and your thumbnail process, that not everything ends up the way that you thought it was going to end up. It's okay to change up some ideas as you go. Absolutely, right? Sometimes I get some really good ideas from mistakes that I make that I really, really enjoy. Here, I didn't even think I was going to make him as buff as he was. Um, I actually thought I would make him a little bit more lanky, a little bit more skinnier, right? There's the 2.5 right there. But it didn't end up that way, and that's okay. There, I'm just trying to put more definition in his arms. Trying to work around with this armor and then adding in that the belt with those little Superman trunks and those big old boots. I thought maybe steel-toed boots, but then I just ultimately didn't like the idea, so I kind of just erased it and just kind of went away with it. I thought I would make a little bit of a slight change from my original design, but when I realized I didn't like it, I just completely got rid of it and just left them as regular boots. And there's not much to it, guys, right? So this is more or less what this particular character is going to look like. Okay. I am messing around with the ideas of a tail, messing around with the ideas of a hill, just trying to figure out what's working, what's not working, what I'm ultimately going to get rid of. I ended up changing the emblem on the chest. You can see that I made it into a simple little dog head because again, if I'm doing this, it's got to be something that I can repeat over and over and over. This drawing is going to be repetitive throughout your comic because it's your main character. Usually, your main character is the one that's going to be completely in focus for the most part. Okay, so that would be a sword. I kind of changed up the idea of what the sword might look like there, just a generic little thing. Kind of mess around with some color ideas, like if the chainmail is green, I kind of keep everything else red. It will kind of be in that Christmassy type of look. I'll ultimately change all of this as I move forward. But again, just to kind of reiterate, uh, what we wanted to have done at our last meeting was create your dog character, sketch up some ideas, use references to help you as you sketch out your ideas, um, finalize what your main character looks like, and then mess around with some thumbnail sketches, and ultimately create a cover. And this is the dog knight character that I decided on when I was for this video. It's not the one that I'll use because again, I'm going to ultimately use that dog from the bottom left that we saw earlier. So here I am just messing around with colors, trying to figure out what colors go well with him, right? So there I am trying to come up with some version of a red armor, right? He's a blonde dog, right? I went again back in with that green that I was thinking about earlier. So that's the green chainmail. Give him a blue belt just to kind of give him another color to make the other ones pop. Give him a pale bluish, pale grayish armor so that I could differentiate between all the different parts on his body, right? Between where his arms are, where the color of his chest plates and stuff like that. So I kind of keep that same color throughout. Give him a gray hilt for the sword, and I color in the 25 with a little bit of red. Decided to make the doggy knight character a little bit darker. So this is the actual cover that I'm going with, just so you guys can see my real cover. And you can see it here. I actually did the same process as the other one. I thought because this is a Christmas type of story that I'm going with, that he's saving Santa Claus as a dog knight, I thought I would keep him in winter clothes, looking up at the sky, hopefully seeing Santa. I thought I would throw a present over there because maybe Santa Claus dropped him a present since it's Christmas, or it might be Christmas Eve in this. Wasn't too sure what I was going to go with. So I'm sketching out an idea of that simplistic dog in a jacket and some pants, some snow pants and whatnot. And then eventually we'll get to the more actiony stuff when we open up this comic book, right? Because again, this is just a cover. It's supposed to draw some interest to people. It should also be kind of recognizable in a sense, right? I should be able to say, oh, this setting takes place in winter. There's snow everywhere. There's a present, and he's got a Santa hat on, so it might be about Christmas. So your reader should be able to have some sort of idea of what this is going to be about. So as soon as I get my sketch done, I start doing my line work. Normally, if I do this traditionally on paper, I can use a light box, or what you can do is honestly just tape your sketch to a window and then just trace over it with another piece of paper. Whenever I work digitally, and even in some cases traditionally, I will outline my entire figure, and usually my outer outlines are going to be a lot heavier than my inner outlines, if that makes sense. So there I am trying to work out this present. And a lot of the stuff that you see, guys, like I try not to spend just one day on it. Um, Although I did this in a day, I went back to it on a different day, and you guys will see the changes or the subtle changes that I've made from this original design to what the finished product actually does turn out to look like. And it's okay if things aren't the way that you want them to turn out. We can always make changes as you go. So here I am just trying to figure out what the eyes are going to look like. Wasn't too satisfied, so I thought I'd come back to them a little later. Just working on that Santa hat. Working on his mittens. Putting some details in here for the jacket. Trying to define where his face is. How the jacket works with his body. Those are his ears right there. Rest of his jacket, rest of his mittens. Just trying to figure out that arm and how that was going to look, because that round part was his back ear, so the ear on the other end. See, and you can kind of see me try to work that in there with that jacket and that ear shape that's on the back end. I thought a D-shaped zipper would be kind of cool, because D for dog. It's the only reason why I chose that shape, just so I don't get repetitive with like the bone shapes. I was trying to mess around with the zipper. Ultimately, I just try to make it as simplistic as possible. So I kind of stuck with that singular line instead of trying to make it more difficult. And then I just try to clean up a little bit of areas here and there as I'm working. There's his feet. Fixing up the pants a little bit. Usually snow pants are a little bit more elastic towards the bottom. Trying to figure out how his legs go in, and then there would be his pants right there. Okay, so this is more or less the snow character that I did with my outline. I do come back in and I make some certain changes. Like I wasn't too satisfied with the eyes, the legs, and stuff like that. So this is my finished product for my cover. This is Dog Night issue #1. Dog Night Saves Christmas. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Again, you're just creating your main character, using references as you decide on what your main character looks like. I showed you my journey as I was creating mine, as I went through my process. You saw my process for the different thumbnails. I did about 4 ideas before I settled on one. And so if you guys can have a cover ready, and then kind of share your experience with your transitions, that would be great to have for the group.